My sister used our shared grief and my personal pain to build a public platform. Her story made her a success. Mine made me quiet. I lost her. I lost a lot. She was always the favorite, not in the obvious spoiling way, but in that quiet, soft way that the youngest kids often are. Bright smile, loud laugh, 1,000 questions, big eyes that got her out of trouble every time. I didn't mind. I was the older one, the steady one, the helper. We were close. Like, finish each other's sentence close, until our mom got sick. When Mom died, I went inward. I barely spoke for weeks. Couldn't look at her room, cried in the car, in the shower, into my pillow, started therapy a month later because I couldn't eat without gagging. My sister? She started talking. She posted a selfie the day after the funeral with a caption about grief being a messy, sacred journey. It got thousands of likes. She started a TikTok account. At first, it was cute. Little skits, thoughts about books, life updates, harmless. Then one day, I got a text from a friend that just said, "Have you seen this?" She had posted a video about the day our mom told us she had cancer. Word for word, my reaction. The panic attack I had, the way I threw up in the parking lot after the appointment. She told it like a monologue. Poetic. Beautiful. And none of it was hers. I called her, said, "Why would you tell that story? That was mine." She said, "We both lived it. It's our story." I said, "But that part wasn't yours. You didn't even see me that day." She got quiet, then said, "I'm just trying to help people feel less alone." I didn't know how to argue with that without sounding selfish, but it still felt like a gut punch. Her account exploded. She started doing live streams, talking about coping with complex grief, healing your inner child, holding space for ancestral trauma. She used terms I'd never heard her say out loud before. Brands started sending her stuff. She filmed unboxings with soft music and our mom's scarf in the background. It felt like watching a staged play of something I was still living. She started posting about Dad, about how he was emotionally unavailable, how she had tore parent herself, how our childhood was chaotic in ways no one noticed. Some of it was true, but not all of it. I texted her, "You're making it sound like we were raised in a war zone." She replied, "You have your truth. I have mine." She got invited on a podcast. They asked her what the hardest part of grief was. She said, "Watching my older sibling fall apart and not being able to reach them." Said I became cold, said I disconnected from the family, said she felt like an only child during the worst of it. I threw my phone across the room. I had driven her to every doctor's appointment, held her hand at the wake, canceled my job interviews to stay home and help her function. But that part didn't fit the narrative my therapist said. She's processing in public. That doesn't make her honest. We talked about emotional ownership, about boundaries, about how grief doesn't give people a free pass to exploit someone else's pain. I realized I'd been trying to protect her by staying quiet, and she'd taken my silence as permission. She mentioned me in a video. Not by name, but clearly. My sibling still hasn't forgiven me for sharing my story, but I believe in speaking your truth, even if it makes people uncomfortable. Suddenly, I started getting DMs. Strangers calling me bitter, ungrateful, telling me to support her healing. I wanted to scream, "What about mine?" I muted her account, stopped reading the comments, stopped watching the posts, stopped trying to track where my life ended and her content began. But it didn't stop the ache, because I wasn't mad that she was grieving publicly. I was mad that she turned my pain into her brand, and I wasn't sure I'd ever get that piece of myself back. I started seeing comments under her videos like, "Your sibling sounds so toxic. You're better off without them. You're the strong one." And she had liked them, didn't correct anything. Didn't clarify, didn't say, "Actually, my sibling's the reason I survived that year." She let the narrative twist. I watched her feed it. I called her, really called her. I said, "You're letting strangers turn me into a villain for something you made up." She said, "I didn't make anything up. People just relate to what I've been through." I snapped, "But what you've been through keeps mysteriously sounding like what I went through." She hung up on me. He doesn't really get the internet, doesn't have TikTok. But one night he said, I feel like I lost both of you. You to silence. Her to whatever she's doing online. I wanted to cry. He wasn't wrong. We were both grieving. Different ghosts. And neither of us knew how to come back from it. I found out through Instagram, a story slide with a publisher tag, and the caption, "It's official. I'm writing my story." I stared at it for 5 minutes. Felt like someone punched me in the ribs. She didn't text me, didn't call, didn't even warn me. She was going to write a book, and I already knew whose grief she'd build it on. I wrote it 4 times, tried to say everything clearly. That I supported her healing. That I understood wanting to share pain. That my stories weren't hers to use. I didn't ask her to stop the book, I just asked her to leave me out of it. I never sent it because I knew she'd screenshot it and call. It part of her process. She stopped replying to texts, birthday messages, holiday invites, updates about Dad. When I finally asked why, she said, "I'm taking space from people who don't support my voice." As if asking for privacy made me an enemy. A mutual friend sent me a PDF, the publisher's early proof. Curiosity got the better of me. I searched for my name. Nothing. Then I searched sibling. There it was. When Mom died, my sibling emotionally abandoned me. I was left to clean up the mess. I became the caretaker, the strong one. It was a beautiful paragraph. It just wasn't true. I booked a consultation with a lawyer, not to sue, just to ask, can someone put your life in a book and profit from it without asking you? The answer was complicated, blurry. Basically, if she doesn't name me, she can write what she wants, even if the world knows who it's about, even if I lose people over it. She posted a video reading from the book. Tearful. Soft voice. Rain sounds. In the background, she read the part where she felt like an only child and how no one was there for her. The comments were brutal. Your sibling sounds like a narcissist. You deserve better than a family like that. I turned off my phone. I felt sick. I kept thinking she might reach out. That maybe she didn't know how bad it had gotten. That maybe she still cared. But she did know. She saw the comments, heard my silence, read the tension, and she posted anyway, because the story was worth more to her than the relationship. She announced it on Instagram. My debut memoir comes out May 12th, our mom's birthday. I don't think it was on purpose. I really don't. But it still felt like someone throwing a party on top of a grave I hadn't finished digging. I told her. Everything. The excerpts, the comments, the anniversary. She said, "She's telling a story where you're not allowed to defend yourself. That's not healing. That's narrative theft." I sat with that phrase for days. I had been erased, then redrawn as the antagonist. And the worst part was, people believed it. Our aunt shared the book announcement, commented something like, "So proud of my brave niece for sharing her truth." She didn't reach out to me, didn't ask what I thought. Realized the people who didn't know both sides were picking the one with the better story. And that wasn't me. He read part of the book. Only part. Then he closed it and put it in the closet. He said, "I'm not mad, I just don't recognize the version of us she wrote about." That hit harder than anger, because if my dad, quiet, loyal, keep the peace dad, felt betrayed, it really was as bad as I thought. She never named me, never posted a photo of us. But people connected the dots, especially the ones who followed me before this all started. Wow. No wonder she needed therapy. You should be ashamed of how you treated her. Just because you're quiet doesn't mean you weren't the villain. Stopped opening messages altogether. Let them think what they want. Yep. She emailed me an invite, formal, like we hadn't shared bunk beds and birthday cakes. It would mean a lot to have you there. I didn't reply. I couldn't tell if it was guilt, image management, or something else entirely. But I wasn't going to sit in a room while people clapped for a story that gutted me. A clip showed up on my feed. I wasn't even following her anymore. Someone tagged me. It was a reading event in Brooklyn. She was reading the same chapter, the one about me. My sibling mourned like a stranger, like they didn't want anyone to see the cracks. People snapped, cheered, and stood. She wiped fake tears and smiled. I slammed my laptop shut. I showed up at her apartment. No warning. No build-up. She opened the door, surprised, said, "Hey," and I walked in. I didn't yell. I said, "I hope the book sells. I hope it helps someone. I really do." Then I looked her dead in the eye and said, "But it broke something in me. I don't think I'll ever get back." She looked like she might cry. She didn't say, "I'm sorry." She just nodded. I walked out. She didn't follow. There was no scene. No parting words. I stood outside waiting for the guilt to hit, but it didn't. Because for the first time since our mom died, I realized I was allowed to grieve my own way, even if that meant grieving the sister I thought I had too. We didn't talk for months. She posted, she toured, she kept telling her version, but I got quieter, stronger, calmer. I made peace with the fact that I would never get an apology, and in that space where I stopped expecting anything from her, I started getting everything I needed from myself. It happened about a month after my last visit. Her face was in a magazine. Her name trended on Twitter. She posted a teary video thanking her audience for making her dream come true. I didn't feel angry. I felt nothing. That was new. Eventually, the heat cooled. The DMs slowed. The online whispering stopped. People moved on, as they always do. She was still writing, still sharing. But I had started living again. I started gardening, took a pottery class, called my dad more, reconnected with some cousins, got a cat. My life wasn't flashy. No curated grief reels, no sponsored therapy journal links, just a quiet, little world that didn't perform for anyone, and it was enough. Not intentionally, I just forgot to. I realized it when a friend asked, "Did you see her new podcast episode?" And I blinked, confused, like someone asking if I'd checked the weather on a planet I don't live on anymore. A mutual friend was organizing a grief and storytelling panel. They asked if I wanted to speak about boundaries, private mourning, and reclaiming your own narrative. I said yes, not to clap back, not to steal the mic, just to speak in my voice for the first time in a long time. I told them the truth. That grief made me quiet, that I didn't write or post or create. I folded laundry, stared out windows, and barely breathed. That silence is valid. That not everyone turns pain into poetry, and that some people's healing journeys look like slow walks with no audience. She said, "Thank you for saying that. I felt broken because I didn't have the words to share my loss the way everyone else seems to." I smiled, said, "You're not broken. You're just grieving without a camera." And for the first time, I saw value in my silence. It arrived in a box, signed, with a note. "I don't expect anything. Just wanted you to know I'm still thinking of you." I didn't read it, not out of anger, but because I don't live in her version of the story anymore. And I'm not going back just to see if she finally got me right. The real her, not the persona. I miss how we used to laugh until we cried, how she braided my hair before Mom's funeral, how we curled up on the couch like kids long after we stopped being kids. But I know that version of her doesn't exist anymore, and maybe mine doesn't either. I wrote all of this, everything, but I'm not going to publish it, not because I'm afraid, not because it doesn't matter, but because it already did what it needed to do. It reminded me, my story is still mine, and I don't owe it to anyone, not even the people who took it first.